This recording is copyright. In the IELTS test, you hear some recordings and you have to answer questions on them. You have time to read the instructions and questions and check your work. All recordings are played only once. The test is in 4 parts. Now look at Part 1. You will hear a man phoning a furniture shop to talk about something he bought. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Good afternoon, Furniture Planet. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling about an item I ordered from your website last week. The package arrived safely, but when I opened it, I noticed that there was a part missing and that one of the pieces was broken.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. In order to get new parts sent out to you, I need to take a few details. Is that all right?
Of course.
Great. First of all, can I take your full name, please?
Sure, it's Gordon Cooper.
Okay, great. Got that. And your address, please, Mr. Cooper.
It's 77 Woolbridge Lane, White Sands, and the postcode is WS178GP.
Okay, and can you tell me the name of the item?
Sure, no problem. It's a large pine bookcase. Main Classic, I think it was called. Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you. And do you have the order number there?
Hold on, that'll be in the email you sent over. The order number, let me check. Yes, here we are. PT9475.
Great, thanks. I've just entered that into the system. Yes, I can see the bookcase here. And which part was damaged, Mr. Cooper?
The top shelf. It's broken down the middle.
Oh, that's strange. I'm very sorry about that. Hold on, I'll check what we can do about it.
Okay.
Right, well, we will offer you a complete replacement. First, we will arrange for a courier to collect the old package from you. When would be a good time for that?
Well, I'm busy tomorrow, so that won't do. Late Wednesday afternoon would be perfect, though. Could we say 5:30?
I'm sorry, the courier only works until 5 p.m.
Oh, okay. In that case, 4:45 would be okay.
Perfect. I'll pencil you in then. After that, you will receive the replacement item within 5 days. So that should be before this coming Saturday.
Great, thanks.
And finally, if there is any problem, how would you like us to contact you? By email or by telephone?
By email, please. My email address is gcooper45@mail.com.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We'll be sure to let you know if there are any problems.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 8 to 10.
Now that we've sorted that out, is there anything else I can help you with, Mr. Cooper?
Actually, yes, there is. You see, I'm buying furniture for our lounge, so I've been looking online. Your website is very simple to find products on, but then it's difficult to know if what you're looking at is suitable because the product description pages aren't very helpful.
Well, it's always useful to hear customer suggestions. How do you think we could improve?
Well, I feel there's not much information about the size and weight of the items, as well as the materials used to make them. Also, although the number and content of the pictures is good, they're sometimes too small to see the details.
OK, I will make a note to pass on to our web development team. Now, to get back to the items you were interested in.
Yes, well, I'm looking for an armchair. The website says that you have the wash.
That is the end of part 1. You now have some time to check your answers. Now look at part 2. You will hear a conservation worker speaking to new volunteers at a nature reserve. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello everyone, welcome to Hargrove Nature Reserve and thank you for coming to help us this weekend. I'd like to start by showing you the map so you can see the layout of the land we're looking after. As you know, the reserve is about 1 kilometre away from Hargrove Town Centre, which is just off the map. And there's a network of paths shown by the dotted lines across the reserve and showing you all the access points. One reason the site is so good for wildlife is that there was already a lot of it nearby, and that's thanks to the allotment gardens, which you can see over on the left of the map. They're surrounded by the path that leads to the town centre, the nature reserve itself, and the school playing fields. Having a large, uninterrupted area is really good for insects and birds, and that attracts other wildlife too. We have a little toilet, and that's kind of encircled by trees about halfway up the reserve. Worth knowing where that is. It's open all the time. There's also a pond which was built by volunteers and where we've already got a healthy population of toads at this time of year. We decided to situate that for the safety of the animals in the bottom right corner of the site as you look at the map, next to the sharp bend on the road. There's a big wall, of course, marking the boundary of the reserve, so there's no danger to the animals from vehicles going along the road past the reserve. While you're working, you'll need various tools which we keep in our shed. Well, that's at the point where several of the footpaths meet. It's kept locked, so just ask one of the volunteer leaders if you need to use it.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 15 to 20.
When the Hargrove Nature Reserve was set up 5 years ago, we didn't know if we'd be able to find anyone wanting to volunteer with us, but in fact, we have had no shortage of applicants like yourselves. Our sessions last 2 hours and we can get quite a lot done in that time. One headache at the moment is the series of heavy storms we've been having this season, which have literally washed away some of our footpaths, so we're trying to restore them and hopefully stop that happening again. Fortunately, we've had generous financial help from the town council, which should cover what we need to fix the paths. There should also be enough for new bins, as we're still having an issue trying to keep the reserve tidy. A lot of people seem to think it's okay to just drop sweet wrappers and drinks cans on the ground, despite the signs asking them not to. Okay, so our main tasks for today. One of the benches between the viewpoint and the trees we planted last week is completely rotten, so we're going to replace it with a completely new one. We've got one in a flat pack with us today, and it just needs putting together. Someone asked if we'll be cutting the grass because it's getting very long. I'll explain why we won't. It's partly because the mower we used to use has broken and we still haven't repaired it. But, more importantly, it's our policy not to cut because allowing growth encourages wildflowers. Speaking of which, if anyone's any good at identifying what kinds we've got growing here, either with an app or your own knowledge, then let us know because that's one of the tasks for today. And listen, by volunteering, by giving your time and your skills, you are doing something amazing. And we appreciate that volunteering to help us costs you time and money, whether that's for parking or getting the bus here. So we hope that through your work here, you'll gain insights into how the whole ecosystem works in an environment like this. And whether you've come alone or with a friend, we're sure that at the end of these sessions, you'll have the feeling that you've accomplished something worthwhile.
That is the end of part 2. You now have some time to check your answers. Now look at part 3. You will hear 2 sociology students, Jamie and Alice, discussing texts they have been reading in order to prepare for a seminar on gender and education. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hi, Jamie. Have you done a lot of reading for the seminar this week on gender and education?
Hey Alice, yeah, I've done quite a lot. It's all a bit confusing, to be honest. Do you want to sit down and have a chat about it?
Yes, that would be really useful actually. What's been confusing you?
Well, it just seems like such a huge area. I mean, you can talk about gender in education in primary school up to university, and also there are such huge differences between countries. You know, the statistics are very different for, say, Japan when compared with a developing country.
Well, yes, there's so much stuff about developing countries and education, especially with regards to gender, but that's not what this will be about. The seminar is about the differences in higher education enrolment for men and women. Haven't you looked at the reading list?
Oh, yes. I guess I just got carried away. So, what have you read from the reading list?
Well, I started with the chapter in our set book, you know, the one written by Hall. I thought that was quite an interesting overview, although it was a little short.
Yes, I read that too. It didn't go into much detail, which was fine, but it was a good place to start. And it included lots of references and quotes to check.
I don't think we need to check all of that. It would be a bit too much. Anyway, after reading that chapter, I tried getting some of the other books on the list out of the library, but they were already on loan.
To be honest, that always seems to be the case in our library. It's a good job we've got access to all of these online journals and articles, or we'd never be able to get any reading done.
Agreed. I've read a load of the articles and journals on the list. There are some really eye-opening statistics there. When I first started thinking about this topic, I thought it would be about trying to get more women into university, but it seems like it's men that are underrepresented.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 25 to 30.
Yes. Tell you what, shall we share some of the main facts and figures we've read, and then we can both take some notes?
OK, that sounds like a plan. Well, I guess the most interesting thing I read was a government paper that said the proportion of women going into higher education was 30% higher than men.
Yeah, that was really shocking, wasn't it? But it's not just the numbers getting into university. I also read a report by the Higher Education Policy Institute that said when at university, men are more likely to drop out, and those who get a degree are less likely to get a high pass.
Yes, but we shouldn't overgeneralise here. Women don't dominate in every field. If we took out some really women-dominated degree subjects, like teaching and nursing, then the overall gap would be much smaller. And there are still more men in some subjects, like engineering and science.
True, but that gap is closing fast. And in all the others, there are more women in nearly every university in the country. The thing I found confusing, though, is I couldn't really identify any causes for this.
Well, I read one writer who suggested that men were much less likely to become teachers, and as a result, the education system was more in women's favour, meaning men lack role models.
Yes, I read that in a few places. It seemed mostly anecdotal, though. I'm not too sure how much of a difference it would really make. And anyway, I read quite a bit and I couldn't find any evidence to suggest that it is significant.
Me neither. It seems there needs to be more research in that area. Another cause that I found said that one possible reason was the change in how students were assessed. You know, before the 1980s, schools mostly tested students with exams, but then they shifted to mostly using coursework, which apparently suits girls better than it does boys.
Really? I guess that's true. I mean, I know that I didn't really like doing coursework. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing what the professor says in the lecture.
Yes, me too. His last one was good.
That is the end of part 3. You now have some time to check your answers. Now look at part 4. You will hear part of a lecture for electrical engineering students about the history of plasma screen televisions. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
So often, when we look at the history of technology, we see products that seem to be cutting edge for a time, but were soon superseded and replaced by something newer and better. One such example is the plasma TV, which was popular in the early 2000s until LCD and OLED TVs arrived on the scene and effectively made old plasma TVs obsolete. Just to quickly explain the technology, a plasma screen features millions of cells filled with gas packed in between two sheets of glass. When these are charged, they light up and collectively form the image on the screen. So I'm going to trace the rapid rise and fall of the plasma television. Its origins date back to the 1960s, when university staff were trying to come up with a way of getting a high-quality visual display that could be used for educational purposes, and for this reason, they produced the first plasma screens. These large plasma screens were ideal for use in businesses, like hotels. If they wanted to convey details to guests about restaurant opening times or whatever, they'd stick one prominently in their lobby. They were also suited for clearly displaying numbers and so on in stock exchanges and places like that. Plasma also started to break through in the domestic television market, as they had a number of key selling points. Now, bear in mind that before the arrival of plasma, the TV set in a person's home would have effectively been a piece of furniture taking up space on the floor or on top of something else. But plasma changed all that and meant that for the first time, TVs could be wall-mounted, which was a great way of saving space. Another improvement was connected to the way people watched. With older TVs, the viewer had to be looking pretty much from directly in front for the picture to be clear. With plasma, that was no longer an issue, as the image was great when viewed at a wider range of angles, which effectively made it feasible for larger numbers of people to watch TV together, even in a small room. The technology could display movement without any blur and meant that image quality always remained absolutely sharp, so it delivered what, at the time, was considered an unrivaled viewing experience. And so from about 2000 onwards, plasma TVs gained popularity. Consumers benefited from an economy of scale as prices dropped. Plus, the screens were getting thinner every time a new model was released, down by 75% in the 5-year period between 2006 and 2011. Having said all that, not everyone was won over by plasma. One drawback is that the plasma technology couldn't yield such intense colours as other kinds of TV have been able to. This was a particular issue for sport, which would often be broadcast during daylight hours, meaning that the image quality wasn't so impressive. To really get the benefit, you'd need to be in a room with blackout curtains. For similar reasons, it was also argued that plasma TVs rather underperformed and weren't really able to sell themselves when showrooms had them out on display. Again, because the TVs couldn't really compete so well with the ambient brightness levels during the hours of daylight. Anyway, before long, the next generation of TVs arrived, the OLED. One selling point of these was that they used far less energy than the amount consumed by plasma TVs, and it may have been this, more than anything else, that spelled the beginning of the end for plasma. They'd had a few strong years, and purchase numbers had peaked worldwide in 2010, but consumers were now ready for something else. In 2014, Panasonic, LG and Samsung all withdrew them from production. Having so recently been a must-have gadget, the plasma TV was consigned to history.
That is the end of part 4. You now have some time to check your answers. That is the end of the test.